I mean this marriage a wonderful union of two families. A few guests chuckled nervously. I kept walking. At 6 o'clock, the guests were invited into the grand ballroom for dinner. The room was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Tables were draped in white linen and covered in arrangements of white roses and orchids. A massive LED screen stood at the front of the room, flanked by speakers. The MC, a polished man in his 50s, stood at a podium near the head table. His voice boomed through the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome for the first time as husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Bradford Montgomery. The crowd erupted into applause. Penelope and Bradford entered, waving, glowing. Dinner was served. I barely touched my plate. I sat at a table near the back, Benjamin on one side, Howard on the other. Gerald was somewhere in the AV booth making final preparations. The speeches began. First, the best man. Trent Morrison, a college friend of Bradford's, stood and delivered a generic toast about love and friendship and the future. The crowd clapped politely. Next, the maid of honor. Amanda Pierce, one of Penelope's sorority sisters, gave a forced saccharine speech about how perfect Penelope was. Her voice wavered. She did not believe a word she was saying. Then Evelyn Montgomery stood. She smiled at the crowd, her voice warm and rehearsed. Penelope is exactly the kind of woman our family needs. Smart, ambitious, and beautiful. We could not be prouder to welcome her into the Montgomery legacy. I gritted my teeth. Legacy. They had nothing left but debt. The MC returned to the podium. He glanced down at his notes, then looked up with a practiced smile. And now the father of the bride, Mr. Roland Bannerman. Penelope's head snapped toward the MC. Her eyes went wide. She shook her head frantically, making a slashing motion across her throat. Her lips moved, mouthing the words, "Skip him." The MC saw her. His expression flickered with confusion, but he was a professional. He looked back at the crowd and continued smoothly. "Mr. Bannerman, your speech, sir." 500 faces turned toward me. The whispers started immediately. "That is her father. My God, what happened to him?" Caldwell leaned over to Evelyn and muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "This could be a problem." I stood. My chair scraped against the floor. The whispers grew louder. I walked slowly toward the front of the room, my footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. Every eye was on me. Every head turned to follow my path. I climbed the 3 steps onto the stage. The MC handed me the microphone, his expression uncertain. I took it, feeling the weight of it in my hand. I turned to face the crowd. 500 people stared back at me. In the front row, Penelope sat frozen, her face pale, her eyes wide with horror. I lifted the microphone and spoke. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here." My voice was steady, calm. I paused, letting the silence settle. Then I said, "You must be wondering why the father of the bride looks like this." The room was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "Let me explain." 500 people leaned forward. The ballroom went perfectly still. "Before the screens light up, I need to know you're still listening. Comment the number 500, representing the 500 guests about to witness this exposure. I want you here with me on this journey. Please note, this story contains dramatized elements reconstructed for educational purposes. If you feel uncomfortable, you're completely free to exit right now." Public speaking had never frightened me. I had pitched to investors, delivered keynote addresses, at conferences, stood in front of boardrooms full of skeptics, and convinced them to believe in my vision. But standing in front of 500 people about to destroy my daughter's life, my hands trembled. Not from fear, from a controlled, burning rage that had been building for hours. I gripped the microphone tighter and spoke. "You must be wondering why the father of the bride looks like he just lost a battle." A few forced laughs rippled through the crowd. Then they died, swallowed by the tension in the room. Some of you may know me. Roland Bannerman. I built Bannerman Technologies from nothing. Started in my garage 20 years ago. Today it is worth $60 million. A few guests nodded recognition flickering across their faces. I saw a couple of people whisper to each other confirming the name. But before the success, I was just a husband and a father trying to survive one day at a time. My voice dropped quieter now, more deliberate. 20 years ago, I lost my wife Catherine to cancer. She was 43 years old. Penelope was 13, Benjamin was 10. The crowd began to quiet. A few people leaned forward, listening. I remember holding her hand in that hospital room, the machines beeping, the kids crying in the hallway because they were too young to understand what was happening. My voice trembled. I did not try to hide it. Catherine's last words to me were, "Promise me you will take care of our babies. Make sure they know they are loved." Several women in the crowd wiped their eyes. I saw tears on faces I did not recognize. I kept that promise. For 20 years, I kept it. I looked directly at Penelope. She was pale, frozen in her seat, her hands gripping the edge of the table. I worked 3 jobs to keep the house. I learned to braid hair from YouTube because Penelope missed her mother. I attended every father-daughter dance even though my heart ached because Catherine was not there to see it. I paused, letting the words settle. I built a company so my children would never have to struggle the way I did. The crowd was silent now, nodding along. Some guests looked at Penelope with sympathy. I turned to her. "Penelope, do you remember what I said to you on your 18th birthday?" She opened her mouth, her voice shaking. "Dad, maybe we should..." I said, "Everything I have is yours. Just remember where you came from. Remember your mother's values. Be kind." I let the silence hang. Then I said, "Last night my daughter drugged me without my consent, shaved my head while I was unconscious, and destroyed my wedding clothes." Gasps erupted across the ballroom. Heads turned toward Penelope. Whispers exploded like wildfire. Penelope shot to her feet. "Dad, stop. You are confused." I ignored her. My voice stayed calm, steady. "I woke up this morning and found my head had been shaved. Brutally. With cut scars and marks all over my scalp. I touched the top of my head, tilting it toward the cameras that were still rolling. Let them see. Let everyone see. How my $15,000 custom tuxedo was slashed into pieces. I pulled out my phone and held up a photo of the destroyed suit. The crowd gasped again. At first, I could not understand what had happened. I drank tea before bed. Tea my daughter brought to me. She told me it was chamomile. My wife's recipe. I looked at Penelope. Her face was white. "The sedative you put in that tea was hospital grade." Bradford stood up, his face red. "Mr. Bannerman, you need to sit down." My voice rose, cutting through his. While I was unconscious, my daughter and her husband shaved my head because her father-in-law, Caldwell Montgomery, is insecure about his own appearance. I pointed directly at Caldwell. 500 heads turned in unison. Caldwell's face went crimson. "That is ridiculous. They did not want me to overshadow him." I said, my voice steady and cold. "So they violated me while I slept." The crowd erupted. Murmurs turned to shouts. Guests stood looking between me and the head table. Some pulled out their phones recording. Penelope's voice broke through the chaos, desperate and shrill. "He is lying. My father has been erratic lately. We have been worried about his mental state." She was playing the victim, now tears streaming down her face. "Dad has been taking too much medication. He does not remember things clearly. We were trying to help him." A few guests hesitated, glancing at each other. Some of them were starting to doubt me. Bradford stepped forward, his voice earnest. "We have been very worried about his health. We were planning to get him help after the wedding." Penelope," I said calmly, cutting him off. "Do you want to tell them, or should I?" She froze. Tell them what be about the $8.2 million debt your new family is drowning in, about the federal fraud investigation into Caldwell Montgomery, about the foreclosure on their estate, Hilco. Caldwell shot to his feet. Those are lies. Or, I continued, my voice rising. Should I tell them about the incompetency petition your husband's lawyer filed yesterday? The one where they plan to have me declared mentally unfit, commit me to a psychiatric facility, and steal my company. Bradford went pale. The crowd erupted into chaos. People stood shouting questions. Cameras flashed. Phones were raised, capturing everything. Penelope's mask shattered. Her face twisted with rage. "Dad, shut up!" She realized her mistake immediately and slapped a hand over her mouth. But it was too late. 500 people had heard her. I looked toward the back of the room. Gerald stood near the AV booth waiting. I nodded. He signaled the technician. I turned back to the crowd and spoke into the microphone one more time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I understand this is hard to believe. So let me show you exactly what happened." The massive LED screens on either side of the stage flickered to life. Penelope's head snapped toward the screens. Her eyes went wide. She saw the timestamp. She saw the night vision footage. She knew. "Shoo," she whispered, then louder, panicked. "No!" But it was too late. The video began. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. This video was worth my entire company, my daughter's reputation, and the truth I had been robbed of. All 10 LED screens around the ballroom blazed to life in perfect synchronization. Every guest in the room could see them no matter where they sat. I spoke into the microphone, my voice steady. "This is security camera footage from my home." The timestamp appeared in the corner of every screen. White text on black night vision. 1:47 in the morning. Wedding day. The footage showed the inside of my closet. The camera angle was high, looking down at the rack where my tuxedo had hung just hours before. The door opened. Penelope and Bradford stepped inside, carrying a black duffel bag. The audio came through crystal clear over the ballroom speakers. Penelope's voice. "He is completely out. I gave him triple the dose." Gasps erupted across the ballroom. Heads whipped toward the screens. Some guests stood unable to believe what they were hearing. On the screens, Bradford pulled scissors from the bag. He grabbed my tuxedo jacket and began slashing through the fabric. Long, deliberate cuts. The sound of ripping cloth filled the ballroom. Penelope laughed. "God, this feels amazing." A woman in the front row screamed. "Oh my God!" Guests all over the room pulled out their phones to record the screens, to capture this moment, to make sure it could never be denied. The video continued. Bradford moved through the suit piece by piece. The shirt, the trousers, everything destroyed in less than 2 minutes. When they were done, they left the closet and moved toward my bedroom. The audio shifted. The buzz of an electric razor filled the ballroom. Then a phone rang. A call connecting over speakerphone. A voice I recognized immediately. Caldwell Montgomery. "Good," Caldwell said. "Remember, make it look amateur. Uneven patches, cuts. We need visible injuries for the photos." The ballroom erupted. The father-in-law was in on this. Caldwell shot to his feet, his face purple with rage. "This is fake. This is doctored footage." I spoke calmly into the microphone. "It has a timestamp. It has been authenticated by forensic experts. Keep watching." Penelope's voice came through the speakers again. "Yes, Father Caldwell." Caldwell's voice continued over the phone. "Perfect. Tomorrow, when he acts out at the wedding, we will have the before photos. Then the after photos of him looking erratic and unstable. The judge will have no choice but to grant the petition." The video showed Penelope and Bradford returning to the closet, disposing of the destroyed tuxedo in a trash bag. The camera captured everything. Penelope holding the electric razor, strands of my silver hair stuck to the blade. Bradford taking photos with his phone. Dad wants documentation, Bradford said on the video. Caldwell's voice came through again, laying out the plan for the incompetency hearing. The timeline. The doctors they had lined up. The care facility where they planned to send me. On the screen, Penelope stepped back and looked toward my bedroom, where I lay unconscious. "Now he looks pathetic," she said. "Exactly what we need." Guests around the ballroom covered their mouths. Some were crying. Bradford's voice came through the speakers. "What about the girlfriend, Susan?" Caldwell replied. "Already excluded from the guest list. Bannerman is isolated. No one will believe him when he claims we did this." Penelope laughed on the screen, a cold, satisfied sound. Her voice continued. "Dad actually believed I forgave him. 20 years of trying to buy my love. Pathetic." Benjamin stood up from his seat, his voice breaking. "Penny, how could you?" Penelope turned toward him, tears streaming down her face. "No, Benjamin, he edited the footage." But the audio kept playing, Caldwell's voice. "Once the hearing is successful, we commit him to the care facility within a month. Full access to the accounts. We liquidate the company assets, quietly pay off our debts, and let the business collapse." Bradford's voice. "What about the brother?" "Benjamin gets nothing," Caldwell said. "Once we control the company, he has no legal standing. By the time he realizes what happened, the money will be offshore." The crowd roared with outrage. The final piece of audio played. Penelope's voice, quiet now, almost reflective. "You know what he said after Mom died? He said we did everything we could. But it was not enough. He spent 20 years trying to prove he was not a failure. Tomorrow I am going to prove he was right all along." I stood by the microphone, tears streaming down my face, but I did not move. I let the words hang in the air. Benjamin was sobbing now, his face in his hands. "Penny, Mom loved you so much. How could you do this?" The final moment of the video played. Penelope standing over me while I lay unconscious in bed. She leaned down close to my face and whispered, "I sleep well, Daddy. Tomorrow you lose everything." The screens went black. The timestamp read 2:52 in the morning. The ballroom descended into chaos. Penelope screamed, her voice shrill and desperate. "It is fake. It is a deep fake." Bradford grabbed her arm and hissed, "Shut up!" Caldwell tried to push his way toward the exit, but guests stood up and blocked his path. People were shouting. Phones were raised everywhere, recording the fallout, posting clips to social media in real time. I stood at the microphone silent and let the chaos unfold around me for 30 seconds. Then I tapped the mic lightly. The sound cut through the noise. The crowd began to quiet. I spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, there is more." Penelope's head snapped toward me. Her face was streaked with tears and ruined makeup. "Dad, please, please do not do this." I looked at her. My voice was cold, steady. "Now you want to call me Dad?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Howard Bennett stood from his seat near the back and walked toward the stage carrying a leather briefcase. The crowd parted to let him through. The video evidence had proven what they did, but I needed to prove why. I needed 500 people to understand that this was not a family dispute. This was organized financial crime. I took the microphone and gestured toward Howard. "This is Howard Bennett, my attorney and my best friend for 35 years. Howard stepped up beside me, opening the leather briefcase and pulling out a stack of documents. His demeanor was calm, professional. He had done this 1,000 times in courtrooms. Now he was doing it in a ballroom. "Good evening," Howard said into the microphone. "I represent Mr. Bannerman. What you just witnessed on that video is criminal conspiracy. But you need to understand the full scope of it." He nodded to Gerald in the AV booth. The LED screens lit up again this time, displaying a financial spreadsheet. Montgomery Family Trust. Assets and liabilities. The numbers were damning. Total assets, $2.1 million. All of it mortgaged or under lien. Total liabilities, $8.2 million. Net worth negative $6.1 million. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. Caldwell shot to his feet, his face red. That is confidential. Howard did not flinch. Not when you conspire to defraud my client. Then it becomes relevant evidence. The next page appeared on the screen. An official letter with the seal of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Howard read aloud. The Montgomery Investment Group is under federal investigation for operating an illegal Ponzi scheme. Between the years of 2019 and 2023, Mr. Caldwell Montgomery is alleged to have defrauded investors of approximately $12 million. The crowd erupted. Shouts of disbelief. Evelyn turned to Caldwell, her voice shrill. "You told me that was settled," Caldwell hissed. "Shut up, Evelyn." Howard continued, his voice cutting through the noise. "The SEC is preparing charges. Mr. Montgomery is facing up to 20 years in federal prison." The next document appeared. A foreclosure notice. The Montgomery estate is in foreclosure. The bank is scheduled to auction the property next month. Bradford stood up, his face pale. "This is private." Howard's voice rose. "It stopped being private when you conspired to steal $60 million. He gestured toward the side of the stage. Marcus Webb, the private investigator, stepped forward and took the second microphone. "I have been investigating the Montgomery family for 3 months at Mr. Bennett's request," Marcus said. His voice was steady, factual. "Let me walk you through what we found." The screen changed to a timeline. February 2024, Caldwell Montgomery instructs his son Bradford to identify wealthy targets. March 2024, Bradford meets Penelope Bannerman at a charity gala. March 2024, Caldwell conducts background check on Roland Bannerman. Net worth $60 million. April 2024, Bradford proposes to Penelope after 2 months of dating. Marcus spoke. This was not love. This was a business transaction. The screen shifted to email evidence. Messages pulled from Bradford's account. Caldwell to Bradford. February 2024. Target has significant liquid assets. Expedite marriage. We need access within 6 months or creditors will force bankruptcy. Bradford to Penelope, March 2024. Dad says we need him to sign the transfer documents. Can you handle it? Penelope to Bradford. March 2024. Done. He signed everything. Trusts me completely. Idiot. The crowd reacted with horror. Several people were openly crying now. I stood to the side, tears streaming down my face, but I did not look away. Marcus continued. The incompetency petition was filed yesterday. 3 doctors signed affidavits claiming Mr. Bannerman was mentally unfit. He held up copies of the affidavits. I contacted all 3 doctors. All 3 admitted they were paid $10,000 each by Caldwell Montgomery to sign their names without ever examining Mr. Bannerman. He paused. That is medical fraud. Howard took the microphone back. Now here is the most disturbing part. He held up a document. The prenuptial agreement. He projected a specific clause onto the screens. Section 7.3. Inheritance Acceleration Clause. In the event that Penelope's father, Roland Bannerman, dies or is declared legally incompetent within 24 months of the marriage date, Penelope shall immediately inherit 60% of his estate. The ballroom went silent. People were processing what they had just heard. Howard let it sink in. Then he said, if Roland dies or is declared incompetent within 2 years, Penelope and Bradford immediately receive approximately $45 million. He paused. This clause is essentially an incentive for his early Absence. The crowd erupted again. They were planning to— "Oh my God!" Howard held up a hand. "I am not saying they planned to harm him, but they did plan incompetency proceedings. And this clause would benefit enormously from his permanent absence." He looked directly at Caldwell and Bradford. "You two might want to hire criminal defense attorneys," Penelope screamed, her voice breaking. "We were not going to hurt him. That is insane." Howard's voice stayed calm. "Perhaps. But you did plan to commit him, declare him incompetent, and drain his assets. And with this clause, his absence would be very financially convenient." He began listing charges on his fingers: assault and drugging, conspiracy to commit fraud, filing false medical documents, 3 doctors guilty of fraud, a financial scheme under SEC investigation, fraudulent marriage, an incompetency incentive clause. He turned to the crowd. "The state prosecutor is going to have a field day." Marcus added, "I recorded a conversation with Bradford's attorney last week. He admitted the incompetency petition was a creative legal maneuver to access assets. That lawyer is now facing disbarment and charges of his own." Caldwell stood desperate. "This is all circumstantial," Howard smiled coldly. "We have video of your family violating my client while you gave instructions over speakerphone. We have emails discussing targets. We have financial records proving bankruptcy. We have a contract that reads like an incentive to harm. There is nothing circumstantial here." He turned back to the crowd. "All of you are witnesses. 500 phones were recording. Like this footage will be subpoenaed. This wedding video is now Exhibit A in multiple criminal trials." He pointed at Penelope, Bradford, and Caldwell. "You are all going to prison." Penelope collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Bradford was arguing with his parents. Evelyn was in hysterics. Howard looked at me. I nodded. He handed the microphone back. I stood there for a moment looking out at the crowd, at the devastation, at the chaos, at my daughter broken and exposed. And then I heard movement behind me. Benjamin stood up from his seat and walked toward the stage. His face was streaked with tears, but his expression was resolute. I stepped aside and handed him the microphone. I had thought Howard's evidence would be the final blow. But my son Benjamin had something to say, and his words would cut deeper than any legal document ever could. "Before my son Benjamin takes the stage, I need confirmation you're still here. Type family in the comments if you're invested in hearing how this ends. The next part will hit hard emotionally. Important note: certain details have been reconstructed to convey the message clearly if you'd rather not continue. This is your moment to step away." My son Benjamin had been silent through the entire speech. I saw him crying in his seat, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone white. When he stood and walked toward the microphone, I did not try to stop him. The ballroom was silent in the wake of Howard's devastating evidence. Benjamin made his way to the stage, his face streaked with tears, but his expression resolute. He took the microphone from me. "Can I say something?" I nodded. "Ben, you do not have to." "I have to," he said. His voice was steady, but I could hear the pain beneath it. He turned to face the crowd. 500 people watched, but his eyes were only on one person. Penelope sat at the head table, her head down, her hands covering her face. Benjamin spoke. "Penelope, look at me." She did not move. His voice rose. "Look at me." She finally lifted her head. Her mascara was smeared down her cheeks. Her eyes were red and hollow. Benjamin's voice trembled. "When Mom died, I was 10 years old." "Do you remember?" Penelope whispered. "Ben, please do not." "I barely remember her face anymore," Benjamin said. "It has been 20 years. Sometimes I look at pictures and I do not recognize her." Tears streamed down his face. "But Dad remembers. Dad remembers everything." He turned, slightly gesturing toward me. "Every single night for 20 years, Dad has talked to Mom's picture before he goes to sleep. The crowd was completely silent. I have heard him through the walls. Catherine Penelope got a promotion. You would be so proud. Or Penny is getting married, love. I wish you were here. I stood off to the side, tears running openly down my face. Benjamin's voice cracked. Last week I went to Dad's office. He did not know I was there. I heard him practicing this speech, talking to Mom's picture on his desk. He paused, his breath shaking. He was crying, and he said, "Our little girl is getting married, Catherine." I did it. I kept my promise. I took good care of our babies. Several guests in the crowd broke down. Women were sobbing openly. Men wiped their eyes. Benjamin turned back to Penelope. Do you understand everything Dad has done for 20 years has been for us? For you. He talks to a photograph every night because he needs Mom's guidance, because he promised her he would take care of us, and he has never, not once, broken that promise. His voice grew harder. And you just destroyed him. The anger rose in his voice, now hot and raw. You blamed Dad for Mom's death. I remember. You screamed at him that he was a failure, that if he had made more money, she could have been saved. Penelope sobbed. I was a child. I was grieving. Benjamin's voice turned sharp. You were 13. I was 10. Do you think I was not grieving? But I did not spend 20 years punishing Dad for something that was not his fault. He took a step closer to the edge of the stage. Mom died of cancer, Penny. Not poverty. Not lack of money. It was a disease beyond anyone's control. He slammed his hand on the podium. Dad worked himself to exhaustion, trying to prove to you that he was not a failure. He built a $60 million company. Do you know what he did with that money? He saved it for us. For your wedding. For our futures. He was going to give you a $5 million house. $5 million. Benjamin's voice broke with disbelief. Do you know what Dad kept for himself? The same car he has driven for 15 years. The same house we grew up in. The same simple life. Because everything he earned he wanted to give to you. He turned to the crowd. My father is the most selfless man I have ever known. He turned back to Penelope. And my sister is the most selfish. Penelope tried to speak. You do not understand what it was like. Benjamin cut her off. What shadow, the one in your head? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. You know what this is really about? Benjamin said. You hated that Dad was self-made, that he was not old money like the Montgomerys. You were ashamed of him, of us, of where we came from. He pointed at the Montgomery family. So you chose them. Bankrupt criminals in expensive suits. His voice softened, turning sad. You want to know the worst part? Dad would have forgiven you, even after all of this. If you had come to him today and said, Dad, I am in trouble, help me, he would have helped. Because that is who he is. He looked at me. Right, Dad. I nodded, unable to speak. Benjamin turned back to Penelope. But you did not do that. You drugged him. You humiliated him. You mocked him. You called him pathetic. You laughed while you shaved his head. His voice rose to a shout. Well, guess what? You lost everything. You lost Dad. You lost me. You lost your reputation, your career, and probably your freedom. A single person in the crowd began to clap. Slow, deliberate. Then another joined. The applause built, spreading across the ballroom. Benjamin's final words were quiet, but they cut like a blade. Mom would be ashamed of you, Penelope broke. Do not say that. Benjamin's voice was ice. She would be, and you know it. You are not my sister anymore. He set the microphone down and walked over to me. He wrapped his arms around me, and I held him tightly. Within seconds, the entire ballroom was on its feet. 500 people giving a standing ovation. At a wedding, the guests were applauding the father, not the bride. Penelope covered her face with her hands. Bradford grabbed her arm. "We need to leave." Now, the head of security approached Caldwell. "Sir, the police are at the entrance. They would like to speak with you." Caldwell went pale. Evelyn shrieked, "I want my lawyer!" I raised my hand, signaling for quiet. The applause slowly faded. I stepped back to the microphone. Benjamin stood beside me. "Thank you," I said, my voice hoarse. "I have one last thing to do." I reached into my vest and pulled out a folded document. The paper was crisp official. It had been there all night waiting. In my vest pocket was a document worth $5.2 million. A deed to the lakefront estate at 847 Shoreline Drive, the house Catherine and I used to walk past when we were poor, dreaming of buying it for our daughter someday. I pulled the envelope from my pocket and held it up. "Before we end tonight, I want to show you something." I opened it and pulled out the legal document. The deed to the lakefront estate at 847 Shoreline Drive. Gasps rippled through the crowd. They recognized the address. One of the most expensive properties in the county. 8,000 square feet. Custom built. Appraised at $5.2 million. Gerald projected images onto the LED screens. The mansion appeared in all its glory. White columns, wraparound porches, sunset over the lake. The guests murmured in awe. 20 years ago, when Catherine was alive and we were still struggling, we used to drive past this property when it was under construction. My voice softened. Catherine used to say, "Maybe someday when Penny gets married we can buy her something like that." After Catherine died, I made it my mission. Every dollar I saved went toward this. 10 years ago, this property went up for sale. I bought it. $5.2 million. I have maintained it, paid the taxes, kept it ready, waiting for Penelope's wedding day. And this was the gift I planned to give. I held the deed high in the air. This document has been in my jacket pocket for 2 days. I paused, letting the silence build. So Penelope, surprise. She stared at me, the realization dawning on her face. This house was yours. Everything I built was for you. But you threw it away when you drugged me and tried to steal my company. I gripped the deed with both hands. Slowly, deliberately, I tore it in half. The crowd gasped. I tore it again and again. The pieces fell like confetti drifting to the stage floor. This property will no longer belong to Penelope. Instead, it will be donated to a new organization I am founding, the Catherine Bannerman Foundation for Elder Care. Applause erupted. This foundation will provide legal support housing and advocacy for elderly people who have been betrayed by their own children. Well, my wife's name will help people whose families tried to destroy them, the way mine tried to destroy me. I looked directly at Penelope. Your mother's legacy will be kindness. What will yours be? Penelope collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Dad, please! My voice turned to ice. Do not call me that. You lost that right when you called me pathetic. I pulled out another document. This is my last will and testament. Updated last week. 50% to my son Benjamin, who actually loves me. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. Dad, 40% to the Catherine Bannerman Foundation. 10% to various charities. To Penelope Bannerman Montgomery, nothing. Not a dollar, not a share, not a memory. A voice called from the back of the ballroom. Roland. Everyone turned. Susan Miller stood at the entrance, wearing a simple navy dress. I was stunned. Susan, I thought. She walked down the aisle, her expression calm and determined. You thought I would let you face this alone. The crowd parted for her. She climbed the steps to the stage. I know I was not invited, but I was not about to let you do this without someone who actually loves you by your side. My voice broke. You came. Of course I came. We embraced. The crowd erupted in applause. Susan turned to Penelope, her voice calm and cutting. Catherine would have wanted someone here who cares about him, I nodded, unable to speak. She would have liked you. Benjamin stepped forward. Mom would have loved you. The three of us stood together, united. I turned back to the microphone one last time. Penelope. She looked up, her face streaked with mascara and tears. This morning you asked me why I was embarrassing you. You said this was your day, your wedding. You were right. This is your day. This is what you built. I gestured to the chaos around us. Police officers entering the ballroom. Guests recording everything. Reputation destroyed. You wanted to marry into the Montgomerys' congratulations. You married criminals. You wanted me to look pathetic. Look around. Who is the pathetic one here? You are no longer my daughter. I release you from this family. As far as I am concerned, Catherine and I only ever had one child, Benjamin. I dropped the microphone. The sound echoed through the ballroom. I took Susan's hand. I placed my other hand on Benjamin's shoulder. Together we walked toward the exit. The crowd rose to their feet. Another standing ovation following us as we walked. Behind me I heard Penelope screaming. Caldwell being read his rights, and I did not look back. Not even once. The last thing I heard as the ballroom doors closed behind us was my daughter screaming my name. Not Dad, not Father, just Roland. Like I was a stranger. I guess I was. We walked through the lobby toward the exit. Benjamin, Susan, and I. Behind us, the ballroom doors muffled the chaos we had left behind. We were almost at the entrance when the doors burst open. Caldwell Montgomery came charging through. His face read his movements unsteady, drunk, furious. You destroyed everything, he roared. He lunged at me. His fist swung wild, glancing off my shoulder. The impact was weak, clumsy, but it sent me stumbling backward. Benjamin stepped between us immediately. Get away from my father. Security guards tackled Caldwell before his fist connected. Two men grabbed his arms and forced him to the ground. Caldwell thrashed, shouting at the top of his lungs. Do you know who I am? I will ruin you. Police officers rushed in from outside. They had been waiting. One of them knelt beside Caldwell, pulling out handcuffs. Sir, you are under arrest for assault. Caldwell was still screaming as they cuffed his wrists. I am Caldwell Montgomery. My family built this town. The officer read him his Miranda rights, while two other officers dragged him toward the exit. Guests poured out of the ballroom, phones raised, recording everything. The video of Caldwell's attack was already being uploaded. I stood there, shaking. Susan steadied me. I am all right, I said, though my voice did not sound convincing. Howard appeared from the crowd. Roland, my car is out back. Come with me. Gerald joined us, tablet in hand. Sir, the video has been uploaded to secure servers and sent to the police. You are protected. A police officer approached. Mr. Bannerman, we will need your statement. Howard stepped in. Tomorrow. He has been through enough tonight. The officer nodded. We have video evidence. Hundreds of witnesses. He glanced at his phone. It is already on social media. The hashtag Justice for Roland is trending. In Howard's car, I sat in the back seat between Susan and Benjamin. Gerald sat in the passenger seat with his tablet scrolling through social media. He turned the screen toward us. Sir, you need to see this. Social media. Trending number 1, Justice for Roland. Trending number 3, Montgomery exposed. A video of my speech had 2 million views. Posted 1 hour ago. The comments were overwhelming. This man is a hero. 500,000 likes. That daughter should be in prison. 450,000 likes. Dozens of guests had posted photos, video clips, screenshots. The story was everywhere. A local news outlet had shared it. Connecticut businessman exposes betrayal at daughter's wedding. Gerald kept scrolling. Sir, there are interview requests from CNN, CNBC. I closed my eyes. No interviews. Howard spoke from the driver's seat. Smart. Let the evidence speak for itself. Susan squeezed my hand. How do you feel? I thought about it. Numb, empty, free. Benjamin rested his head on my shoulder. You were incredible, Dad. I shook my head. We were incredible, you and me. At 9 o'clock, Howard dropped us off at my Victorian house. Benjamin was staying the night. So was Susan. Gerald met us at the door. Sir, the security system is armed. No one can get near this property. Howard walked us inside. Roland, get some rest. Tomorrow we will make official statements. The police have everything they need. He handed me a folder. I filed motions to dismiss the incompetency petition. It will be thrown out Monday. The prenup is void due to fraud. Penelope gets nothing. The transfer documents you signed also void. The company is safe. I let out a breath I did not realize I was holding. Thank you, Howard. He shook his head. No, thank you. You taught me what dignity under fire looks like. He left. Benjamin, Susan, and I sat alone in the living room. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Benjamin stood. I will make tea. Real tea. He gave me a pointed look. I laughed, faint and tired. Thank you, son. Susan sat beside me on the couch. How is your head? I touched the scars. Still there. Still bald. She smiled. I think you look distinguished. I laughed bitterly. You are kind. I am honest, she said. Catherine was right to love you. My eyes filled with tears. You did not have to come tonight. Yes, I did, Susan said. That is what people who actually love you do. They show up. We sat in silence, holding hands. Benjamin returned with tea. The three of us sat together, sipping quietly. My phone, set to silent, kept lighting up on the coffee table. Notifications, voicemails, messages, I ignored all of it. Let us just sit here. For a little while. At 11 o'clock, Benjamin and Susan went to their rooms. I stood in my bedroom, looking at the framed photograph of Catherine on my nightstand. Her smile looked back at me, warm and unchanging. For 20 years I had talked to that photograph every night before bed, updating her, asking for guidance, seeking forgiveness for the mistakes I thought I had made. Tonight I did not say a word. I climbed into bed, turned off the lamp, and closed my eyes. I did not need to explain myself anymore. She already knew, and so did the rest of the world. They say time heals all wounds. I do not know if that is true. A year later, the scars on my scalp are still visible when I run my hand through my short silver hair each morning. But the weight I carried for 20 years is gone. I woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Susan humming in the kitchen. 6 months ago, she became my wife in a quiet ceremony at the courthouse with Benjamin and Gerald as witnesses. No grand ballroom, no 500 guests. Just 4 people who genuinely cared about one another and vows spoken without pretense. Good morning, husband, Susan said, handing me a mug. She wore jeans and a sweater, her graying hair pulled back, and I thought she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen besides Catherine. Benjamin called at 9. Dad, the board meeting went well. Valuation is up to $75 million. He paused. Are you ready for today? Today. The opening of the Catherine Bannerman Foundation at 847 Shoreline Drive. The 8,000-square-foot lakeside mansion that once symbolized a broken dream. Now it housed 12 bedrooms for survivors of elder abuse, a legal aid office staffed by Howard Bennett's firm Therapy Rooms, and a healing garden overlooking the water. Gerald drove us to the estate. 200 people filled the lawn. I stood at the podium looking at the house Catherine and I had walked past 30 years ago, when we were young and poor and full of hope. A year ago, I stood in front of 500 people at my daughter's wedding. I began. I showed them a video of her drugging me, shaving my head, and destroying my tuxedo while she and her fiancé laughed. Then I tore up the deed to this house and let the pieces fall like confetti. The crowd was silent. I do not regret it. This building represents something real. In the past year, 47 people have found safety here. 47 lives that mattered more than my pride or my pain. After the ceremony, a reporter asked if I had any contact with my daughter. No, I said simply. The video of your speech has 50 million views. Do you have any message for people who saw it? I thought for a moment. Elder abuse is more common than people think. Financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, physical harm. If this foundation can help even one person escape that situation, then everything I went through was worth it. I did not mention that Penelope was now 34, divorced, working at a Target 20 miles away. I learned this from Benjamin, who still tracked her movements out of protective instinct, though he refused all her attempts to contact him. Her letters arrived at my office every few weeks, forwarded unopened by my assistant. I never read them. The legal aftermath had been swift. Penelope received a 2-year suspended sentence, 500 hours of community service, and a $50,000 fine for conspiracy and assault. Bradford received probation. Caldwell Montgomery was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for securities fraud conspiracy to commit elder abuse and obstruction of justice. The Montgomery estate was auctioned off to pay creditors. I felt no satisfaction in their destruction, only a quiet, hollow relief that it was over. That evening I visited Catherine's grave alone. I knelt and brushed away the fallen leaves. I kept my promise, I whispered. I raised them. Benjamin turned out strong, kind, everything you hoped. Penelope. My voice broke. I tried Catherine. I swear I tried. But I could not save her from herself. The wind rustled through the trees, and for a moment I imagined I heard Catherine's voice. You did your best. You have to let her go. I do not know if I can forgive her, I admitted. But I am learning to forgive myself. I stayed until the sun dipped below the horizon, then drove home to Susan, Benjamin, and Gerald. We gathered around the dinner table, and Benjamin raised his glass. To Dad, he said, for teaching me what real strength looks like. To Catherine, Susan added softly, for raising a son who knows how to stand up for what is right. I looked around the table at these people. My family not by blood alone, but by choice, by shared struggle, by love that had been tested and proven true. To second chances, I said. Later, after everyone had gone home, Susan and I sat on the back porch under the stars. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I wrapped my arm around her. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not installed that camera? She asked. In every day, I said. But I think the truth would have come out eventually. It always does. Stati, do you think she will ever reach out in person? I was quiet for a long time. Maybe, but I am not waiting for it anymore. I spent 20 years waiting for her to come back to me. I am done waiting. Susan squeezed my hand. You are a good man, Roland Bannerman. I thought about the bald, scarred reflection I had seen in the mirror a year ago, the destroyed tuxedo, the betrayal that had nearly broken me. Then I thought about the foundation, the survivors we had helped, the family I had built from the wreckage. I am a survivor, I corrected gently. And so are you. We sat in silence, watching the stars, grateful for the quiet, ordinary miracle of a life reclaimed. So here I am, 67 years old, scarred, but standing. And I want to speak directly to you, listening to this family story. Looking back, I see where I went wrong. I mistook silence for peace and compliance for love. I waited too long to confront the signs because I was terrified of losing what little connection I had left. Don't make my mistake. If someone you trust begins to manipulate you emotionally, financially, legally, act immediately. Document everything. Seek help. Protect yourself before loyalty becomes your downfall. God gave me strength when I had none left, and I believe He put people like Howard Gerald Benjamin and Susan in my path for a reason. This family story taught me that love is not about blood alone, It's about who stands beside you when everything collapses. My Dad Revenge was not about cruelty. It was about justice, accountability, and breaking the cycle of abuse. Some call it harsh. I call it survival. Dad Revenge is not always violent. It can be showing the world exactly who hurt you and why, then choosing to rebuild rather than destroy yourself in the process. If this family story resonates with you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts or your own experience. Hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss another Dad Revenge or family resilience story like this one. Your support keeps this channel alive and helps others find the courage to stand up. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. I appreciate every one of you. Important note: this narrative contains fictionalized elements created for educational and reflective purposes. If the content does not suit your preferences, feel free to explore other stories on the channel that better align with your interests.